Welcome to the Seeds of Promise faculty panel, part of the Living the Promise campaign celebration weekend. I'm Tom Smith, and I currently have the pleasure of serving as the interim provost and executive vice chancellor at UCR. We're going to start this session with a land acknowledgement. So please imagine that you're on the campus of UCR right now. We at UCR would like to respectfully acknowledge and recognize our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseno, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, this meeting place is home to many indigenous peoples from all over the world, including UCR faculty, students, and staff. And we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. I want to thank you again for joining us to hear from this faculty panel. Today, I will lead a discussion with these four pioneering UCR faculty as we explore ways philanthropic seed funding transforms lives and leads to breakthrough discoveries. I hope that you've had a chance to watch the panelists' TEDx-style video talks, but if not, they're still available at celebrate.ucr.edu. We'll be sharing the link for that in the chat. This is just one of several events this weekend, and you can still register for other events at celebrate.ucr.edu. Now, I'd like to introduce the panelists. First, I have Dr. Catherine Stavropoulos. She is an assistant professor in the Graduate School of Education. She completed her postdoctoral work at the Yale Child Study Center and received her PhD in experimental psychology at UC San Diego. A licensed clinical psychologist, she serves as the assistant director of the Search Autism Resource Center, which is the University of California's first family autism resource center. She also conducts research to understand the reward system in children with and without autism, and her lab just published the first neuroscience study on cute aggression. You might want to check that out in her video. Next, I have Dr. William Grover. He is an associate professor in the Department of Bioengineering. Prior to joining UCR, he received his postdoctoral training at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and his PhD in chemistry at the University of California, Berkeley. His research lab focuses on developing precision measurement instruments for use in a wide variety of different fields, including medical diagnostics, material science, toxicology, and many others. His lab has several fun research projects, including turning medical instruments into sensors and making computers that run on air instead of electricity for soft robots. Think Baymax from Big Hero 6. Dr. Hollis Woodward is assistant professor in the Department of Entomology. She received her PhD from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign prior to joining UCR. The Woodward Lab focuses on the feeding, biology, and nutritional ecology of native bees, and the roles that food availability and nutrition play in native bee decline. She's traveled all over California and even up to Alaska, collecting bumblebees. And our last participant is Dr. Byron Ford. He is currently Associate Dean of Preclinical Medical Education and a professor at the UCR School of Medicine. In addition, Dr. Ford is CEO and CSO of BrainGen Biotech. Dr. Ford's research studies the cellular and molecular mechanisms involved in the pathophysiology of stroke and acute brain injuries. His fun fact, outside of work, he is part of a large family, the oldest of 4 brothers with 36 aunts and uncles and over 100 first cousins. So the way that we're going to organize this is I have several questions that I will ask, and each of the panelists will take time to offer their ideas around the question. So the first one, briefly tell us about your research and how your findings influence our understanding of the world around us. We'll start with Catherine Stavropoulos.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us this morning, and I'm thrilled and honored to be part of this panel. So thanks, Provost Smith. So I kind of wear two hats at UC Riverside. I do neuroscience research. I'm the principal investigator of the Social Cognitive Developmental Neuroscience Lab. And my research focuses on brain activity of children with and without autism. And as Provost Smith mentioned, I also have done research on trying to understand the brain basis of cute aggression. So basically answering the question, why do I get an uncontrollable urge to squeeze my dog when I see him or her? And I'm also a licensed clinical psychologist and the assistant director of the UC Riverside Search Center. So I think I'm very, very excited to be able to tell you about how my research helps us understand the world a little bit better. So in terms of clinical work, getting an initial diagnosis of autism is a transformational experience for families. It unlocks doors to services. It unlocks the ability to have parents get help for their child in a variety of ways: speech therapy, occupational therapy, in-home services, special education services. And we know that the earlier children are diagnosed, it tends to improve long-term outcomes. My work at Search as the assistant director is really focused on trying to decrease existent barriers between Latinx families and those who are Caucasian in terms of how early children get diagnosed with autism. So we're the first UC free autism clinic. We see any and all children from the Inland Empire whose parents or teachers or anyone has concerns that they might have autism. And it really allows us to serve the most underserved and vulnerable families in our region, which is just hugely meaningful for me. And we're hoping that through this work, we'll be able to lower the age of diagnosis, especially for families living in more rural regions, those who maybe can't afford to go to San Diego or Los Angeles to one of the larger hospitals to get a diagnosis. So we're really thrilled about that work. And then in terms of my neuroscience work, I want to understand how we can move closer to what I like to call precision medicine. So how do we know what interventions will work best for what child with autism? Right now, it's sort of a guess. We have to just give families the interventions we know are research-based and hope their child responds. But not every child responds the same way to the same intervention. So my neuroscience work is focused on trying to understand how can we better match a given child to a given intervention. And we hope that by doing that, we'll be able to take what we call biomarkers or brain signatures of who is most likely to respond to which type of program. And by doing that, we'll be able to help families get closer to being able to predict accurately, okay, I'm going to start with this intervention because that's what's most likely to benefit my child. So those questions kind of form the basis of my research and the basis of my clinical work.
Thank you, Catherine, both for that response, but also for all the work that you're doing for young people in the Inland Empire. Next, I'd like Professors Grover and Woodward to tell us a little bit about their research.
Hi, everybody. I work on bees, and native bees specifically, and most of the foods that we eat that are the most nutritious in our diet, so many fruit, nut, and vegetable crops, are pollinated by animals, and mostly it's bees that are doing that work. And so, you know, they're tiny little critters, but collectively they're so important for us being able to support the size of human population that we have on the planet, and to keep us healthy and to keep those foods that we really love on our plates. So my lab group is working on bumblebees. It's the group that I fell in love with, and they're so important. You know, we wouldn't have, let's see, blueberries in our yogurt, and we wouldn't have greenhouse tomatoes in the middle of winter if we didn't have bumblebees, and they pollinate many other things too. And so that group is really important from a human economics and human health perspective, but also they play a really important, fundamental, even keystone role in many of our natural ecosystems. So they are flying around, they're generalists. That means that they visit lots of different flowering plants. Many bees are specialists and they only go to one or a few things, but the bumblebees, they're flying around and visiting all kinds of different plants, some of which are endangered, or they play themselves really important roles in our ecosystems. And so trying to figure out how bumblebees are, how they work basically, and how they're going to continue to function in light of all the stressors that we're placing on them in our current era is something that I am focused on. And I've been working with Will. He can tell you more about the solutions he's helping us to come up with, but we have a collaboration going. It's multifaceted, where we have many different questions, things we don't know about bees, we've never known before. We need to figure them out if we want to try to conserve them for food security and ecosystem security. We have a million problems that we can go to Will with. And he's been really fun and creative to work with because he helps us come up with solutions to trying to study and understand them.
Thanks, Hollis. Thanks everyone in the audience too for joining. So yeah, that's where we come in. So I'm from the Barnes College of Engineering, in particular the Department of Bioengineering. So if anyone's not familiar with bioengineering as a discipline, right, it's applying engineering principles to solving biology related problems. Now, often though, the field, practically speaking, is focused on medical biological problems, right? Human health directly, right? And that's an important set of problems, right? So that's, I don't fault the field for that. But one thing I like about our program is we're called bioengineering, not biomedical engineering or something more specific, because, you know, all of biology can be helped by applying engineering practices to solve problems. And so I always try to keep an ear out for interesting, not directly human health related problems in the biology world that our engineering principles and our skills could be applied to. So when I got the chance through a philanthropic grant that I think Dr. Woodard will talk about here in a minute, when I got the chance to work with Hollis and her students on automating one of the most laborious processes in their lab, which is feeding, which is actually manually rearing these little bee larvae, right? Bees raise their young by constantly feeding them over hours and hours as they go through the process of maturing from a little larva up to an adult bee. And so the process of doing that by hand in the lab so that folks like Hollis and her students can study it, that's a really laborious, time-intensive, horrible process to do by hand. So when I heard this problem, I thought, hey, there's a technology in my lab, and it's a bioengineering technology that folks have mostly developed for going after human health applications, but we could tailor this technology to go after the problem of raising bees in Dr. Woodard's lab. That technology is microfluidics. It's like computer chips, except instead of running on electricity, they run on tiny droplets and streams of fluid. And if you'd like to know more about technically how that works, you can watch our little TED Talk that's in the link that's over in the chat, and we'll tell you a little bit more and actually show you what these chips look like when they're working. But, you know, it was such an exciting interdisciplinary opportunity because a technology that frankly already existed in our lab, developed for human health applications, we found with just a few adaptations and changes, we could adapt it to solve a whole other problem that's still important. As Dr. Woodard said, right, our whole food supply chain bears on this. So it still bears on human health, but indirectly in a way that as a bioengineer, I found really fascinating. And so the opportunity to work with Hollis and her students on not just this, but all these other interesting entomology problems has been a wonderful way of new applications for bioengineering. And it's benefited not just me, but my students, my grad students and my undergrads who've had the chance to work with her wonderful team as well.
Thank you, Hollis and Will. We're so proud to have both of you at UCR. Next, I'd like to go to Dr. Byron Ford, and hopefully he can tell us a little about his research and the impact that it's having.
Sure, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel. So the video that I recorded was based on my science research, but I'll also briefly discuss my educational research in my new capacity as Associate Dean for Medical Education. So I'm a neuroscientist, a neuroscience researcher who studies stroke. As many of you know, stroke is a devastating neurological condition with very few treatment options. And unfortunately, stroke disproportionately affects people of color. So it's a personal issue to me, as well as a research issue. And so I've been working for about 20 years to develop a treatment for stroke, a compound we call Neuregulin-1. And I'm very excited. We've been working with a biotech company that has one version of this molecule in clinical trial for heart failure. It's already been shown to be safe in patients, and it improves heart function in patients with congestive heart failure. And so I'm excited that we're partnering with colleagues over at Riverside Community Hospital. And what we're hoping that with this partnership, we'll be able to piggyback onto the FDA approval, the IND from the biotech company to develop a treatment for stroke that would hopefully benefit our community and others across the world. But in addition to the research that we're doing in my lab, which is very exciting, I recently became Associate Dean for Medical Education in September 2021. So that's right in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And so during that time, we had to quickly figure out how to transform our curriculum from an in-person format into a virtual format. And so I think we've done that successfully, but in the process, we learned a lot of best practices. We learned how to incorporate some of what we learned into what we will develop as an innovative curriculum that will enhance the educational experiences of our students. And so what I will also bring to this is prior to becoming Associate Dean, I was director of our graduate program in biomedical sciences. And so it's always been sort of important and a passion to me that our clinicians are scholars. And so we want our clinicians to not only be competent, compassionate, and caring, but we want our graduates to really understand the basic principles of research. And I think COVID has been a prime example of exactly why that's needed. So physicians, when they graduate, they need to be able to accurately understand and assess information. And one example is vaccines. So physicians need to be able to help their patients navigate through the wads of misinformation and accurate information to figure out what is useful, how to best get access to the vaccines, how to understand how the vaccines work, and to know how they will actually benefit the community. And more importantly, how do we get those vaccines into our communities, particularly the communities of need and communities of color? And so we really have to understand all of the inner workings of how that works. Our physicians need to understand the basic premises of clinical trials. How do clinical trials work? How do we explain to our patients why it's important to participate in clinical trials? How do we also get members of our community to be able to take advantage of these clinical trials so that our patients can benefit from some of these exciting new therapies that may come available? And so this is an exciting time for me to be able to merge both my research in bringing what I'm doing into the clinic and into the community, and then being able to train physicians that will understand how do we take those applications into the community so we can benefit our patients and our greater community.
Thank you, Dr. Ford. That work is really just in time right now. Now I'd like to shift a little bit and have each of our panelists tell us a little bit about how private support for their research has had an impact on their work. We'll start with Dr. Grover and Dr. Woodard.
Well, I really appreciate the support that we've received from Cynthia and Tom Delfino. Will and I have some interesting kind of wild ideas for how we can try to save the bees together. And while my lab group has been supported by the traditional funding mechanisms, at the same time, sometimes you need a little jump start and you need some support to generate the preliminary data and the prototype for some of the technologies or innovations that we really need. And so I would say that, it's really important to have that kind of funding mechanism in place and available to us, because it lets us try kind of wild new things and see if they work. And if they do, it allows us to pursue things on a bigger scale. So it allows for creativity in our research that I don't think I would have been possible without it. So we're really fortunate. I think in that way, that's the way I think of it, as being one of the most valuable aspects of the support that we received.
Yeah, that's right. I'll second that. Without the Delfino family support, we would have never started working together on the initial feeding project, and then that's spun off so many other really fascinating collaborations between our labs. I'll tell you one other insight into what the impact of philanthropy has been that I've witnessed is in bioengineering. Actually, an anonymous parent donor donated recently funding to start a bioengineering instructional equipment fund that basically modernizes and improves a lot of the instructional equipment that our undergraduate students use. And it's amazing because this seemingly simple, donation of some equipment to modernize some things has these ripple effects throughout our curriculum in bioengineering, right? Certainly it's used in our lab classes, which is where the students learn these tools of modern bioengineering. They get to add them to their resumes, and employers tell us those are important skills for our graduates to have. They also get to use these tools in their senior design or capstone experience. So in their entire fourth year, they reach out to folks all over campus, folks like Dr. Woodard, and try to design solutions to bioengineering relevant problems. And now, due to the generosity of this parent donor, we have more tools for them to use in those projects. And then finally, I think the majority of our students do undergraduate research in our labs as well. I'm talking about our undergraduate students here. And so again, these tools, through this donation of instructional equipment, they're available for those students to use in their own independent research projects. And indeed, some undergrads have been using those tools in my lab and in the donated tools to help with projects like the collaboration here with Dr. Woodard. So it's just one example where something that seems on the surface to be a specific individual donation to improve some instructional equipment in bioengineering in our classrooms actually has ripple effects far and beyond that really touch every aspect of our curriculum and preparing our graduates to be competitive in the workforce.
Thank you, Dr. Grover and Dr. Woodard. Now I'd like to turn to Dr. Ford and ask him about how private philanthropy has had an impact on his research.
Sure, and so I have two parts to that question, and the first is related to my my personal research, and I'll say that this is an opportunity here. Unfortunately, philanthropy has not been a part of my personal research. It has been typically the government funding, but I think this is something that the School of Medicine wants to improve. And I think this campaign that we are successful in with the school and with the School of Medicine, there is a desire to help to support some of the research going on for faculty members in the School of Medicine. So I think there's a real opportunity here. And so hopefully we can take advantage of that. But there has been tremendous philanthropic support for our educational programs. For example, we have the Mission Scholars Program, where we identify students who are consistent with the mission of the School of Medicine to serve the underserved and can pay a full ride. And it's made a lot of difference for students who may have had difficult time paying for the expensive academic program that's responsible for getting an MD degree. And so there are a number of different scholarships and awards that have been provided for our medical students. We could always use more. So hopefully this will again be an opportunity to enhance that. Where the school has really been active recently with regards to supporting faculty members is the initiation of a number of endowed chairs. And so we have a number of generous philanthropic individuals who have funded endowed chairs that have allowed academics to do research, either in education or research. And so I think this campaign has been a wonderful example of the things that we can do. And I hope that we can continue to build on that.
Thank you, Dr. Ford. Now I'd like to hear from Dr. Stavropoulos about how philanthropy has helped her research.
Yeah, so I want to talk about three things briefly. Philanthropy has impacted absolutely every part of my research. So I'm going to briefly describe three things. In my personal research, there's two projects that have been incredibly generously funded by philanthropic donors. One was a project where we brought Peers, which is an evidence-based intervention for teenagers with autism to help them make and keep friends, to the Inland Empire. This intervention has traditionally been available largely at private clinics and is very costly, or at private schools or schools with extremely high levels of funding. So it isn't something that has been easily available for families like those who live in the Inland Empire. So this project allowed us to start this intervention at UCR for the first time. as well as to measure brain activity of these teenagers before and after the intervention, so we could better understand whether both behavioral improvements and neuroscience changes were something that we saw. And this was a very long and wonderfully challenging project, 3 years, a 4-month-long intervention supported by so many graduate students who worked extremely hard on this. And none of that would have been possible without the generous donations of philanthropy. And we're very proud to say that even with COVID, 1 paper has been published already, 3 more in preparation, more than 8 posters and talks, one of which won an award. All of these were spearheaded by graduate students. And then a second philanthropically funded project is an international collaboration between myself and researchers at the University of Washington and Israel. And we're going to study how the neuropeptide oxytocin, which is involved in familial bonding and pair bonding both, affects both brain activity and behavior in children with autism. And we'll be measuring brain activity as well while parents and children are face-to-face. So it's face-to-face kind of interactive neuroscience, which is extremely exciting and novel work we would never be able to do without such generous donations. And then lastly, I want to talk about Search. So the Search Center is a free clinic run by myself, Dr. Jan Blatcher, who is the founder and director, and run by graduate students who are getting training in how to become clinicians through the Search Center. And as this free clinic, we are open to anyone and everyone in the Inland Empire who has concerns that their child might have autism. So Search runs entirely on the power of philanthropy, and it wouldn't be possible to have Search without philanthropic donations. And the donations allow us to get materials for our cognitive and other testing that we do for autism, to support the graduate students as they learn this work and are trained, as well as to help support the grad students go to conferences and make really important professional connections as they build themselves up to an independent career. So in all 3 of these ways, philanthropic generosity has completely transformed the work I do, and none of these things would be possible without it. So I can't say enough how much I appreciate that.
Thank you, Catherine. So often people think that our research is funded primarily by the federal government and the state government. And I think all 4 of you have really given us some really good examples of how private philanthropy can help accelerate our work. Our final question is really thinking about the future. UCR likes to aspire to be future fluent. And so I'd like to hear a little bit about what holds for your future inquiry, and how you think UCR can help you shape that future. Let's start with Dr. Ford.
So for me, I think this is one of the brightest opportunities at UCR. It's one of the things that stood out for me. I arrived at UCR in 2015, having previously been on the faculty at my institution for 15 years with no intention of leaving there. But when I learned about UCR, I really learned how the place is growing and really building and becoming a powerhouse in both research and education. I quickly realized that in the School of Medicine and across UCR, that the campus is building an infrastructure for translational research. And that will allow us the ability to really get a solid research idea from the bench into the bedside and into our communities, which is where we really need to get them. I think the mantra that you're hearing today from the government about COVID vaccines is that you not only have to manufacture the vaccines, but you have to get them into someone's arm. And so with translational research, we're figuring out how can we generate these ideas, these drugs, these devices, and actually get them to a patient in a hospital that's in need. And I think that's where UCR has the opportunity to take the lead in dealing with some of these issues. I think also in the School of Medicine, our ability to partner with a number of different affiliated hospitals and clinicians across our region also helps our ability to do this type of research, because it broadens the base of the different types and locations of patients that we can interact with, and also the experiences that our medical students have as they build their medical degree and learn how best to come back and serve the community. I think this also builds an infrastructure for us to be available to attract funding, whether it be government training grants, and hopefully, in this case, philanthropic support that will continue to allow us to be able to do the types of work that we want to do that is consistent with the mission of the School of Medicine and the mission of UCR. And I think finally, in terms of education, we really want to create a community of clinicians, and we need more clinicians in this underserved area that are available to treat patients in this area with our specific needs. And we want them to be able to treat clinicians by giving the best cutting edge medical care possible. We want them to have the most accurate information so that they can make sure that their patients are getting the best information and are healthy. So we really do want to take our ideas from the bench into the clinic, into the community, serve our patients with the best possible care that we can. And I think UCR has the ability to be a leader in doing that.
Thank you, Dr. Ford. Dr. Stavropoulos, could you tell us a little bit about the future of your research and how UCR fits into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the risk of sounding like I'm saying a canned phrase here, I really do think that the future is limitless. And being at UCR, somewhere that supports social mobility, really emphasizes service to the region, and promotes translational research, like Dr. Ford said, bringing research from the bench to the bedside or to actual patients in actual clinics, is exactly what's going to move the field forward in the way we have to go. And I know in my introduction, I spoke a little bit about this idea of kind of precision medicine for children with autism and trying to understand which children will benefit the most from which type of intervention. And I do think that's where the field is trying to go. Interventions are kind of long-term commitments, and trying a couple before you find the right one for your child is hugely challenging, especially when you're trying to get your child the best type of help in this early developmental window. And for me, I think neuroscience and behavioral interventions, when you combine them, that's going to be the backbone of where we're going. And UCR has been just incredibly supportive of this type of work that's going to end up being transformational. And clinically, I think although all of us struggled and continue to struggle with COVID, and I was, heartbroken by the idea of not being able to serve families at Search in person. That was, a very difficult transition for me, is thinking about being away from the clinic. It also pushed us in ways that we wouldn't have been pushed otherwise. So we've transitioned to be entirely online and are providing telehealth diagnoses and services to families of children in the Inland Empire. And that's something we had talked about for a long time, but time is limited and we were always busy working in the clinic. So during those months when we were agonizing about what was obviously becoming a long-term kind of stay-at-home order from the pandemic, it allowed us to do something we had wanted to do, which was to allow our services to be fully online. And I think in the end, that's going to help us serve families from remote regions, those who are traditionally underserved and minoritized, those who can't really get transportation reliably to UCR. So I think after COVID, we're going to keep using a hybrid model. We won't be totally online, but I think we're going to have this dual model. And that will allow us in the end to serve so many more families than we ever would have been able to. And overall, I think the biggest goal of my research, both neuroscience and clinical, is to improve the lives of children with autism and their families. That's really, that at the end of the day, that's the goal, is not to have highest quality research that just lives in the university. It's the goal is to bring the research to the people who need it the most. And UCR's commitment to that is something that I think is going to take us into the future, and why I love UCR so much as a place to work.
Thank you, Catherine. It's great to hear that there's at least some silver lining to this pandemic. And we'll close this out with Drs. Woodard and Grover on talking about some of their joint work together in the future, I hope.
Well, UCR is already an agricultural powerhouse. We're the land grant institution that serves Southern California. We have an agricultural experiment station right on campus where we can take students and they can run experiments and learn about food security and agriculture firsthand. Our entomology department, which I'm a part of, so that's a department that works on insects. We're consistently ranked in the top entomology departments in the world. And so, and we're lucky to have quite a few pollinator people here. So we work on different aspects. We have a honeybee focused person, and we have someone working on the gut microbiome of bees. And we have a really nice group here that we are working together to try to figure out how we can protect and conserve our bee populations here for food security. So I would say we're already on the forefront of things when it comes to agriculture here at UCR, and I hope and expect to see that continue. When it comes to bee research, I think that fusions like between Will's lab and mine, that are focused on incorporating technology into studying, all the tiny little insects that fly around and do all this work for us. I think those types of synergistic projects are going to become increasingly important because we have some pretty big problems on our hands in terms of trying to conserve pollinators and insect biodiversity conservation in general. And I think there are going to be more and more of these types of projects. And I know that Will and I for sure are going to keep trying to find new ways to work together to try to blend technology and entomology. And I hope to see that happening even more around the world. So I would say we're on a leading edge of something that many people are starting to think about and work on.
Yeah, that's right. And then from my perspective, I mean, how lucky am I as an engineer to get to work on problems and projects like that, right? With folks like Dr. Woodard and with such an outstanding entomology department. And it's a blessing. It's also thinking toward the future. I know there's bleak things in the world, many things to point to and think of. And I always walk out of teaching, even when it's virtual on Zoom, feeling so much hope and genuine excitement about the future because I get to interact with our students, right? The bioengineering students in particular, they seem to attract a really awesome, altruistic, diverse, multifaceted student population. And these are the people that are graduating from here and going on to change the world, and they're going to change it in ways like the collaboration with Dr. Woodard, and trying to help save bees and secure our food supply for the future and a million other problems that need our attention, right? But what a wonderful thing to be contributing to that future workforce that's going to help solve these problems, And so those problems are interdisciplinary too, right? Folks have already mentioned the coronavirus, food security, things like climate change. We're going to all of us on the campus, everyone you've heard from today and all the other, colleges and departments and whatnot, come together and pool our expertise to solve these problems. And I think looking toward the future, the reason that UC Riverside will be at the forefront of that is that they recognize the value of these interdisciplinary stories like you're hearing about today. And they put through donor funding and other programs that are in place to encourage these collaborations, they put their money where their mouth is and actually facilitate these sorts of relationships that you saw today. And in the process, make us well posed to be a university really solving these problems as we move into the coming years.
Wow. So bees, autism, stroke, vaccines, this panel really knows how to bring their topics of research alive. And I hope that they really energized you on some of the exciting work that's happening now at UCR and going into the future. I want to thank all of the panelists for really great answers to the questions that I handed out. And I really encourage everybody to go and watch their TEDx style talks if you haven't had a chance to do so already. So thanks all of you. This has really been a treat for me, and I hope that it's been a treat for everybody on screen and off that's had a chance to listen. I also want to thank everybody that's been attending today and to everyone who contributed to making the Living the Promise campaign a success. With the current slide you see on the screen, you see that the UCR campaign celebration is going on all weekend, and it's not too late to register for these events. I'd like to point out two in particular. Later today, the Chancellor will host Beyond Brilliant, UCR and the Future of Higher Education. That's at 3 o'clock. And tomorrow at 6 p.m. is a multimedia celebration of our ambitious and successful campaign called A Toast to UCR. So I want to thank the panelists once again and wish everybody a great day.